Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Raimundo Rios Mayo Library in Arcanasa. And welcome to the show. My name is Chris James, your host. Tonight we're going to be talking about the puppet masters. Who is really running the planet? Just about forever, people have been blaming the problems of the world on one source or another, just so long as they didn't have to shoulder any of the blame themselves. So who is the most popular target of today? Let's begin with everyone's favorite secret society, the Freemasons. Since the middle of the 19th century, Masonic historians have been looking for the origins of the organization in a series of documents known as the Old Charges, dating from around 1425. The Masons say they are directly related to the builders of Solomon's Temple, and one man in particular, Hiram Abiff. There's no clear record showing a relationship to the temple. Not everything was written down from the past, and sometimes you have to go by oral history. Over the course of thousands of years, things get lost or destroyed. Look how many times the great library of Alexander was burned. In 1129, a small group of knights showed up in Jerusalem and said they were there to protect pilgrims on their way to the city. They were allowed to bivouac in the remains of Solomon's Temple. The temple had been sacked in 70 A.D., and no one had managed to fix the place up. The knights moved in and made the best of their situation, and they dug. They dug around under the temple, looking for secrets unknown. They must have found what they were looking for, because soon the Knights Templar were the most powerful group in all of Europe and the Middle East. As with any secret group, rumors began to spread. Nastiness was being undertaken behind closed doors. Anytime you have a worldwide organization with super-secret manifestations, someone is going to make things up. People just hate not knowing. So, if you won't tell them, they'll come up with their own stories. The Templars had just about every country in Europe in their debt, including King Philip of France. As a way of getting out of debt without having to work too hard, the king filed charges against the Templars, accusing them of all the things people had thought they might be doing. At dawn, on Friday the 13th of October, 1307, a date sometimes linked with the origins of the Friday the 13th superstition, King Philip IV ordered Desmoulins and scores of other French Templars to be simultaneously arrested. Then came the real nastiness, torture and executions galore. None of the Templar treasure was ever found, as well as the Templar fleet of ships that they had. Plus, the Templars were arrested in France, but not in Germany or several other countries. Some had tried, but the Templars showed up fully armed and not willing to be treated to the ruling class's less than hospitable accommodations in the local dungeon. They simply left. Soon the order had vanished from sight, but they were still around, using other names and other secret societies. In September 2001, a document known as the Chinon parchment, dated 17 to 20 of August, 1308, was discovered in the Vatican's secret archives by Barbara Frail, apparently after having been filed in the wrong place in 1628. It is a record of the trial of the Templars, and it shows that Pope Clement absolved the Templars of all heresies in 1308, before formally disbanding the order in 1312. The Freemasons showed up just over 100 years after the order was dissolved. Now, there are numerous reports of strange knights showing up during battle, dressed in white robes with a large red cross on the chest. This was the Templars' emblem. And look at the Swiss flag. It kind of resembles the Templars' emblem. Not all the Templars were arrested, only those in France. The others simply went into hiding and changed their names. George Washington was a Mason, as well as a lot of his generals. The Declaration of Independence was signed by several Masons as well. Leading up to the Civil War, the country had two distinct forms of Masonic lodges. There were the Masons of the North and the Masons of the South. The Supreme Council of the Southern Jurisdiction was founded in Charleston, South Carolina, in 1801. This council was in charge of the goings-on in states in the southern half of the country. Surprisingly, or maybe not, the states and territories in the southern jurisdiction are also the states of the Confederacy. The nation was split along the border between the two jurisdictions of the Freemasons. This strikes me as just a bit odd, but then who can say for sure? One branch of the Freemasons, the Prince Hall Masons, played a role in beginning and then sustaining the Underground Railroad. They were against slavery and felt it was their duty to help sneak runaway slaves to freedom. Then, on the other hand, there were the Knights of the Golden Circle. They had no qualms as far as keeping slaves and felt it was their duty to do anything, including assassinations, to keep the southern states, or help the southern states win the Civil War. John Wilkes Booth is thought to have been either a member or a sympathizer with the Knights of the Golden Circle, who were in Baltimore at that time. Jesse James is also reputed to have been a member, either during the war or shortly thereafter. We're going to take a very brief pause right here, play a few commercials, station identification. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more on the Puppet Masters. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Iturbide, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Trike. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. Just a quick last-minute reminder. The 15th anniversary Texas Bigfoot Conference kicks off this weekend, Saturday, the 15th. Meet all the people you've seen on TV. Craig Woolheater, Ken Gerhart, Nick Redfern, Lyle Blackburn, and Dr. Jeff Meldrum, just to mention a few. October 15th in historic Jefferson, Texas. That's this Saturday. If you're quick, you can still get there in time. Make plans to attend and don't miss out. The Texas Bigfoot Conference, just look for Texas Bigfoot Research Center on your computer for more details. Now we're talking about the Masons and the Knights of the Golden Circle and some of the things that they've been associated with. Today, Masons are in just about every town and city in the U.S., and the stories of everything from black magic to devil worship are dropped at their doorstep on a regular basis. That's what happens when you have so many secrets. Now, Masons aren't bad people. I've known several Masons over the years, and by and far, they are some of the nicest folks I've ever met. They say the Masons make a good man even better. However, it seems the higher up in the organization you go, the more secretive and unusual they get. No, Masons aren't devil worshippers, but that doesn't mean there aren't a few devil worshippers in high and mighty places. Now, the Illuminati is a name given to several groups, both real and fictitious. Historically, the name usually refers to the Bavarian Illuminati, an Enlightenment-era secret society founded on May 1st, 1776. The society's goals were to oppose superstition and religious influence over public life and abuses of state power. Or at least, that's what they tell us. Seeing as they were a secret society, we only have their word as to what they had planned for the rest of the world. The order of the day, they wrote in their general statutes, is to put an end to the machinations of the purveyors of injustice, to control them without dominating them. The name implies the members were illuminated or advanced in the ways of higher thought. They likened themselves to be smarter and therefore in a much better situation when it came to guiding the world on its path. The path just happened to be the best path for the Illuminati and not necessarily the best one for the rest of the planet. I will agree that the smartest people should be allowed to put forth possible ideas as to which way society should advance, but that doesn't mean let them make all the decisions. Just about any time a secretive group begins steering things, they will benefit the most, and usually at the expense of everyone else. The Illuminati, along with the Freemasonry and other secret societies, were outlawed through edict by the Bavarian ruler Charles Theodore, with the encouragement of the Roman Catholic Church in 1784, then again in 1785, 1787, and once more in 1790. In the several years following, The group was vilified by conservative and religious critics who claimed that they continued underground and were responsible for the American Revolution as well as the French Revolution. Many influential intellectuals and progressive politicians counted themselves as members, including Ferdinand of Brunswick and the diplomat Xavier von Zwack, who was the order's second-in-command. In attracting literary men such as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Johann Gottfried Herder, and the reigning dukes of Gotha and Weimar republics, parts of Germany today. The Illuminati today is said to be linked directly to the original organization, and still we have only their word for this as well. For all we know, anyone can begin calling themselves Illuminati, and we would be no more wiser as to their lineage. They are often alleged to conspire to control world affairs by masterminding events and planting agents in government and corporations in order to gain political power and influence and to establish the New World Order. Speaking of planting agents, Adolf Hitler worked for the secret police and was actually sent to the Nazi Party to find out what they were doing and report back to the authorities. Once he'd attended a few meetings, Hitler decided the Nazis had the right idea, and he managed to work his way up to the very top of the party. And then there's Joseph Stalin, who was also a member of the secret police, only in Russia. He was sent to keep tabs on Lenin and Trotsky, so they didn't get too big or powerful. When Joe realized the Bolsheviks were going to win, he switched his allegiances to come out on the winning side. We all know how that worked out in both cases. Adam Weishaupt, 1748 to 1830, was a professor of canon law and practical philosophy at the University of Ingolstadt. He was the only non-clerical professor at an institution run by Jesuits, whose order had been dissolved in 1773. The Jesuits of Ingolstadt, however, still retained the purse strings and some power at the university, which they continued to regard as their very own. There was constant friction between the clerical staff and the secular staff, leading to several fiery disputes. Weishaupt decided to create his own secret society, which he based on Freemasonry. He would have simply gone with the Masons, but he didn't like the fact that it cost money to join, and the Masons didn't go along with some of his other ideas. So Weishaupt set about finding those of like-minded beliefs to fill his new secret society that he would call the Bund der Perfectibilisten, or Covenant of Perfectibility. Later, he changed it because it sounded too strange. On May 1st, 1776, Weishaupt and 4 students formed the Perfectibilists, taking the owl of Minerva as their symbol. The members were to use aliases within the society. Weishaupt became Spartacus. A law student, Massenhausen, Bauhoff, Mers, and Suter became respectively Ajax, Agathon, Tiberius, and Erasmus Rostradamus. Weishaupt later expelled Suter, finding him a bit too lazy and a bit of a womanizer. It was not until April 1778 that the order became the Illuminaten Orden, or the Order of Illuminati, after Weishaupt had seriously contemplating calling them the B Order. Let's face it, the B Order doesn't sound nearly as intimidating or as secret as Illuminati. Massenhausen started out being the most active in expanding the society while he was studying in Munich shortly after the formation of the order. He recruited Xavier von Zwick, a former pupil of Weishaupt. At the time, he was in charge of the Bavarian National Lottery. Massenhausen enthusiasm soon became a problem in the eyes of Weishaupt. Massenhausen often attempted to recruit unsuitable candidates. It's one thing to recruit new members, but in any secret society, you have to find people who can keep a secret. Go signing up any Joe Blow, and soon you'll get someone who writes a book and blows everyone's cover. Later, Massenhausen's erotic love life made him less than a good secret keeper, and control of the Munich group was passed over to Zwack. It was later discovered Massenhausen had misappropriated funds, and he was in the habit of intercepting correspondences between Weishaupt and Zwack. Massenhausen left the Illuminati. At this time, the order had a membership of 12 people. With the departure of Massenhausen, Zwack immediately applied himself to recruiting more mature and important recruits. Most prized by Weishaupt was Herdel, a childhood friend and a canon of the Munich Frienkirche. This is one of the biggest churches in Germany. By the end of September 1778, the order had 27 members. The Illuminati are credited with kicking off the American Revolution as well as the French Revolution, but with so few members, they would have found it hard to start any kind of a grand scheme. They may have sown a few wild ideas, but they lacked the manpower to change any governments. Weishaupt wanted his order to become a world mover and shaker. He envied the status of the Masons, so you've heard the old adage, if you can't beat them, join them. Weishaupt solicited membership in the Masons and was allowed to join. He thought he would learn some deep, dark secrets that he could use to further his Illuminati order. There were no secrets for him to obtain, or at least that's what they told him. His progress through the first 3 degrees of Blue Lodge Masonry taught him nothing of the higher degrees he sought to exploit. But in the following year, a priest named Abbe Marotti informed Zwack that these inner secrets rested in knowledge of the older religion and the primitive church, things from back in the 1 in 200 time period. Zwack persuaded Weishaupt that the Illuminati should enter into friendly relations with the Freemasons and obtain the dispensation to set up their own lodge. With little difficulty, a warrant was obtained from the Grand Lodge of Prussia, called the Royal York for Friendship, and a new lodge called Theodore of the Good Counsel, with the intention of flattering Charles Theodore, Elector of Bavaria. This is the man who had outlawed secret societies so many times in the past. It was funded in Munich on March 21st, 1779, and was quickly packed with Illuminati members. It didn't take long for Weishaupt to step into the front office and take control of this Illuminati society, disguised as a so-called Freemason lodge. The next step involved independence from their Grand Lodge. By establishing Masonic relations with the Union Lodge in Frankfurt, affiliated to the Premier Lodge, the Premier Grand Lodge of England, the Theodore Lodge became independently recognized and able to declare its independence. As a new Mother Lodge, it could now spawn lodges of its own. The recruiting drive amongst the Frankfurt Masons also obtained the allegiance of Adolf Freilier Nig. The non-mystical Frankfurt Lodge created an eclectic alliance with which almost indistinguishable in constitution and aims from the Illuminati Federation. Far from seeing this as a threat, after some discussion, the Illuminati Lodge joined the new alliance. Three Illuminati now sat on the committee charged with writing the new Masonic statutes. Aside from strengthening relations between their three lodges, the Illuminati seem to have gained no advantage from this maneuver. In reality, the creation of the Eclectic Alliance had undermined all of the subtle plans of the Illuminati to spread their own doctrine through Freemasonry. Now the Illuminati found themselves in a conflict with the Rosicrucians, who already were deeply entrenched in the Freemasons of Europe. The Illuminati distanced themselves from Freemasonry as a means of avoiding too many conflicts that might lead to public exposure. The whole reason for becoming a secret society is to remain secret. Of course, not being content to become enormously wealthy and powerful, the members of both the Freemasons and the Illuminati began to set their sights on higher aspirations. Now, the Rothschild family is the number one most wealthy family on earth. In 1760, Mayor Amschel Rothschild was in the employ of the German landgraves of Hesse-Kassel in the city of Frankfurt. His specialty was finance. Rothschild managed to use his position working for the ruler to invest some of his own money and some he borrowed from his boss, and was able to amass a huge fortune. This he passed on to his family. This wealth was used to establish an international banking family through his 5 sons, who established themselves in London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, and Naples. Yes, the name is Jewish, but I doubt anyone from the family has set foot inside a synagogue in decades. They are Jewish in name and ancestry, but they hold none of the values or faith of their forebears. A legend amongst the Rothschild family legacy is one of Nathan Mayer Rothschild, who, making an absolute fortune in the aftermath of the Battle of Waterloo. With the Rothschilds orchestrating the British war efforts in the Napoleonic War, the 5 brothers had set up a giant network of contacts, which included couriers, shippers, and most importantly, agents. We'll continue with the Puppet Masters after this brief pause for some commercials and station identification. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Ederby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to Strange Things. Just another reminder, October 22nd, 2016, there will be a Halloween-themed car show, as well as a free movie, hosted at the Mall del Norte. The festivities will begin at about 3 p.m. and finish up about 11. Bring the whole family to Mall del Norte October 22nd, 2016. Unfortunately, the Laredo Paranormal Research Society will not be able to attend due to scheduling conflicts. But the car show and the festivities will still be handled by the Mall del Norte people. So come on by if you're looking to have a good time for Halloween festivities. That's October 22nd, beginning at about 3 p.m. Now, getting back to the story at hand, the Puppet Masters. During the Battle of Waterloo, which was fought near Brussels, Belgium, it had been raging, and with Napoleon appearing to be on the upside of this battle, news soon reached London that Waterloo would be lost. However, reinforcements did arrive, and eventually the British Army came out on the top of the battle. Now, one of these agents comes into play, with his job to provide Nathan Mayer Rothschild with news before anyone else could get the story to London. Paying a ton of money to get a boat over the choppy waters from Ostend, Belgium, the agent reached London well before any other news bearers could cross the English Channel. The legend states that Nathan Mayer went to the London Stock Exchange, and in a bid to cause prices to crash, he sold all of his government bonds. Well, everyone else, seeing what he was doing, they followed suit, believing that the Battle of Waterloo was lost. At the very last minute, Nathan Mayer then bought all the government bonds he could at a record low price. When news broke of Britain's victory at Waterloo, the prices of these bonds soared upwards, resulting in immense profit for the Rothschild dynasty. If you remember the movie Trading Places, where Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd used their prior knowledge to sell and then buy stocks and then make a killing, this is what Rothschild did in London. Today it's called insider trading, and people go to jail for it, but at that time it was considered a fair trade. It is well known among those who have seriously studied in the subject of war that wars are very expensive, and they have to be financed by special groups of bankers. We call them international bankers. The greatest among these bankers is the House of Rothschild, which has been quietly exerting its financial and political power over world events from well behind the scenes for over 200 years. Now, Britain ruled the world through its navy, and its navy ran on coal. At one time, whenever they said that the sun never set on the British Empire, they were referring to the fact that Britain ruled a country on every side of the planet, so that no matter what time of day it was, somewhere the British nation was in the sunlight. A coal-powered battleship was considered the best you could get, until something called oil began to make its mark on the world. Now, the people of Britain weren't too keen on the idea of rebuilding their entire fleet, and coal was readily available from Wales. Where were they supposed to get all of that oil from? Germany was beginning to build up its world dominance, and the thing that got Britain's attention was when Kaiser Wilhelm sent a battleship into Agadir a British port in 1911. This was considered an affront to the British Empire, and something had to be done about it. Britain immediately began to rebuild their navy to keep up with those Germans and put them in their place being anywhere the British were not. The Rothschild family owned oil production in France and the U.S. through their connections with Standard Oil, which is owned by John Rockefeller, who was indebted to the Rothschilds. Rockefeller didn't just inherit his enormous fortunes. He borrowed the money from the Rothschilds as a means to start his oil empire, which he soon managed to turn into a mega empire. Oil-powered ships were faster and more reliable, so change they must. The British began to look for sources of oil to keep their new ships at sea so they could keep their empire afloat. The Middle East was awash in oil, but it was also awash in people who didn't get along with each other. What to do? The usual solution was to start a war. Now, Britain needed oil to keep those new warships at sea, and they voted to buy 51% of an oil company as a good start. To meet the necessity of securing foreign sources of oil, puppet regimes would be established in countries like Persia, which was later known as Iran. And then there was the Turkish Empire that was very much in the way. Britain would have to do something about that as well. The Suez Canal ran right through a big part of the Turkish Empire. They were going to need the Suez Canal in order to transport all that oil from the Middle East to England. So, the Austro-Hungarian nation started a war with Serbia. France and Britain sided with Serbia. Then the Germans got into the fray by siding with Austria. Turkey got drawn into things on the side of Austria and Germany, and the next thing you know, we have World War I going on. When at long last Germany and all of its allies decided they'd had enough, the great redesigning began. After the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, the signing of the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919, the map of Europe was redrawn. By who else? The winners. Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman or Turkish empires created a large number of new but smaller countries in Eastern Europe. Initially, these new countries tended to have substantial ethnic minorities which wished to unite with neighboring states where their ethnicity dominated. But Britain got what they wanted, control of the Suez Canal and oil from the Middle East. And the plans for World War II were being drawn up behind closed doors. Let's face it, there's a lot of money to be made during a war. And a world war means world-class financing. You never see any of the great powerhouses lose their money during any war. Someone has to supply the oil, the gunpowder, the raw materials to make a good war even better. The Rothschilds came out on top after both world wars. In 1954, the most powerful men in the world met for the first time under the auspices of the Dutch royal crown and the Rockefeller family, who was representing the Rothschilds, in a luxurious hotel called the Bilderberg of a small Dutch town in Oosterbeek. For an entire weekend, they debated the future of the world. When it was over, they decided to meet once every year to exchange ideas and analyze international affairs. They went by the name of the Bilderberg Club, and since then they have gathered yearly in a luxurious hotel somewhere in the world. They plot arrogantly on how to on the subversion and silent takeover of constitutional governments everywhere that can be achieved. Their goal is a world government run exclusively by their hand-picked puppets and with the largest benefits going to themselves. A Bilderberg funding member and for 30 years a steering committee member, Dennis Haley, said, "To say we were striving for one world government is exaggerated but not wholly unfair. Those of us in Bilderberg felt we couldn't go on forever fighting one another for nothing and killing people and rendering millions homeless. So we felt that a single community throughout the world would be a good thing. Never mind all the rest of the world who slave all week to pay their taxes, which somehow vanish into private banks all over Europe." A case in point, in 2011, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is in fact a privately owned bank, secretly printed over $1.1 trillion and electronically gave this gigantic bonanza to European Central Bank and to a number of banks in Germany, Italy, Spain, Great Britain, Belgium, Switzerland, France, Portugal, and elsewhere. This is not a loan. They gave the money away, as in, here you go, see ya, no need to pay that back, we'll get the U.S. taxpayers to pay this off. These European institutions, because of their greedy Ponzi schemes that had failed, were on rubbery last legs, and the whole of Europe was about to go bankrupt. Then our Federal Reserve came to the rescue with $1.1 trillion. Just days before this outrageous crime was perpetrated, the Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke, publicly stated that to bail out Europe's banks and to recapitalize Europe's elitist, troubled governments, financial institutions would be a violation of federal law. It will not be done, the con man said, and then he did it, and without a peep from the president or our Congress. Now, do you think that money was doled out to poor folks to buy food and clothing? No. It more than likely went to the big bankers who had lost a few dollars by making bad investments, and we got stuck with the bill. What do we know about the Bilderberg Society? A few people have heard of them, and if you try to find them, you'll be told they don't exist. However, they are a group of international bankers and super-rich people who believe they should be allowed to rule the world. You've heard of the New World Order, or One World Government. Well, these are the people who are pushing these ideas down other people's throats. It is not for the good of man that they aspire to control the planet. It's because they think they were born into a higher social status and the planet belongs to them. Daniel Estulin had this to say about the secret society. The Bilderberg Group, Bilderberg Conference, Bilderberg Meetings, or Bilderberg Club, depending on how they say it or who is saying it, is an annual private conference of 120 to 150 people of European and North American political elites, experts from industry, finance, academia, and the media, established in 1954. A man named Joseph Rettinger, a 33rd degree Mason, was the spark that lit the flame. He was the political aide to General Sikorski and served in the London-based Polish government in exile during World War II. In addition, at the age of 58, he parachuted into German-occupied territory outside of Warsaw for some sabotage missions. At 58, I don't think I'll be jumping out of any airplanes, especially not during a war. What with his high-profile career in the 1950s, he was able to create contacts with several high-ranking military officials and political leaders. His main aim was to unite the world in peace. His peace dividend was to be under the control of supernatural, powerful organizations. He believed that such organizations would be immune from the short-term ideology conflicts erupting between governments. Did you ever wonder why, no matter which party is in control, the decisions always seem to hurt us, the taxpayers? To Rettinger, it was insignificant what dominated the economic ideology of a country. He believed that these differences could be brought into line by powerful multinational organizations dictating and applying powerful economic and military policies, thereby creating a union and a bond between nations. Officially, Prince Bernhard of Holland is credited with the starting of the Bilderbergs, but he was just the poster boy, a pretty face and a facade. In 1952, Rettinger approached Bernhard with a proposal for the secret conference to involve the NATO leaders in an open and frank discussion on international affairs behind closed doors. Prince Bernhard at the time was an important figure in the oil industry and held a major position in the Royal Dutch Petroleum. We know them as Shell Oil. Meetings such as those of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, the G8 World Trade Organization, World Economic Forum, Central Bank, the European Union Council of Ministers, and the EU Commission, EU summits, government committee meetings, numerous think tanks, etc., are always conducted behind closed doors. The only possible reason for this is they don't want you and me to know what they're really doing. That well-worn excuse for keeping things under wrap, "it is not in the public interest," really means that it is not in the interest of the powers that be that the public should know what's really going on. We are going to take a brief pause here for a couple of commercials and station identification. Don't go away. We'll be right back after these. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Ederby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And be sure and drive up this Saturday to Jefferson, Texas, if you wish to attend the Texas Bigfoot Conference. The festivities there will begin at 9 o'clock in the morning. You'll get to meet such world-renowned Bigfoot hunters as Ken Gerhart, Nick Redfern, Lyle Blackburn, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, just to mention a few. So remember, Saturday in historic Jefferson, Texas. And getting back to the puppet masters, there is in addition a network of private forums and meetings that take place where the secrecy principle extends to the forums and the meetings themselves. By and large, we don't even know that they're taking place, let alone what is being planned and discussed. Bilderbergs control the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, all European central banks. Every prominent European commissioner has at one time or another attended a Bilderberg meeting. Every NATO general secretary is a Bilderberger. You see what we're up against? Bilderberg, in fact, is a foreign policy arm of an all-powerful and completely unknown group called the Committee of 300, whose ancestors were the British East Indian Tea Company, whose main line of work didn't have anything to do with selling tea, but rather with moving drugs. Anytime somebody from England touts out the old "we never had slaves," just ask them about the East India Tea Company. If you were living in India during the British colonial era, there was a chance that you and your family might just get shipped to Africa, where you would be forced to work on a plantation. If you had the idea that you wanted some freedom and you took your family to anywhere other than where you had been assigned, the East India Tea Company Army would come and take you back to your proper place, or they'd simply kill you. Now, opium doesn't grow in China, and yet people accredit opium smoking with the Chinese people. Why do you suppose that is? In 1793, China was the home of sophisticated culture and a rich history. Among other remarkable achievements, China invented movable type, kites, and gunpowder. They perfected porcelain, silk, and tea production. In 1793 was to be the beginning of the end for Imperial China. Great Britain and other European nations desired silk, tea, and porcelain. They wanted badly to trade with China. And China wanted nothing to do with Europe and even refused to see European diplomats. Finally, in 1793, a British diplomat was successful in reaching the Chinese court. He told the Chinese of the wonderful products of his country, convinced that once they really knew what Europe had to offer, they would quickly agree to engage in trade. And China said, "Nah, don't need anything from you." They did, however, agree to sell Europe their silk, tea, and porcelain, but they would buy nothing in return. Because Chinese goods were so sought after in Europe, an imbalance of trade developed. European gold and silver went to China for imported goods, but none returned because there was no possibility of export. This was unacceptable to the British, and they desperately looked for a solution. The solution to Britain's problem was opium. Although opium had been used in China for medicinal purposes for a long time, it had not been used as a recreational drug. It was too expensive, and it was not that easy to obtain. The British brought in loads of opium to China in 1825, making the drug cheap and readily available. Soon, not surprisingly, Chinese began to be addicted to the drug. The emperor outlawed the possession, use, and trade in opium, but the profits were so immense that an illegal trade quickly developed. The East India Tea Company supplied all the opium the Chinese wanted, and the Chinese government was unable to stop the smuggling. The balance of trade was gradually reversed. In 1839, the emperor ordered a stop to all opium trade. The British were outraged, especially the East India Tea Company, and the First Opium War began. Faced with British industrial weaponry, it was no contest, and Britain easily defeated the Chinese. As part of the settlement of the war, China was forced to agree to open up new ports for trade and to surrender the island of Hong Kong. Bet you didn't know Hong Kong came from the drug trade. A second Opium War was launched by Britain in 1856, forcing more concessions on the Chinese. Among other humiliations, the Chinese government was no longer able to hold foreigners accountable under Chinese law for crimes committed in China. If you were a European in China, you could literally get away with murder, and there was nothing the government would do about it. An ever-weakening Chinese government also lost the support of its own people, whom it could no longer protect. By 1911, the empire was dead, and a republic of sorts was born in China. In fact, the entire world drug trade is controlled by several members of the Committee of 300. The trade nets something like $500 to $700 billion a year. Most of this dirty money is recycled through all the major stock markets and then pocketed as a legitimate profit. Their goal is to rule the world. The doctrine of this group is not democracy or communism, but is a form of fascism. The doctrine is totalitarian socialism. You must begin to think correctly. The Illuminati, the Masons, and the Bilderberger Society are not communists, but some communists are members of these secret societies. The very idea of a bunch of world bankers, few of whom are U.S. citizens, wanting to decide who will be our president doesn't sit well with me. These folks have come to the conclusion that not only do they want all of the money in the world, they want all the power as well. Anytime you hear a decision being made that just doesn't sound very good for our country, ask yourself who's really making these decisions. Let's just pretend for a second there's an election coming up. How can you tell which candidate is under the control of the puppet masters? Simple. Just watch the news. The news agencies are mostly under the control of just a few people, so whichever candidate seems to get the most positive airtime, regardless of how bad their history is more than likely the puppet master's candidate. The worse this person is, the better, as far as the secret society are concerned. If the candidate can't stand on their own, then the puppet masters have that candidate under their full control. They sure don't want somebody with no skeletons to hide gaining power in any country on this planet. That way they can pull the strings and get their puppet to dance to any tune they choose. Who will benefit under a one-world government? It sure wouldn't be us at the bottom of the pile. We'll be called on to pay for this, maybe with our lives, but the puppet masters will reap all of the benefits. Some would say these people are devil worshippers. Not so. If there was an altar set up in the heart of one of these secret societies' back room, well out of view of prying eyes, it would not have a statue of Beelzebub. No altar to the Horned One would be seen. Sacrifices would not be made to the Lord of Darkness. No, if anything, there would be a giant mirror mounted in such a way as to show the image of the worshipper. The only thing these people really believe in is themselves. They were born to rule the world, and Lord help anyone who gets in their way. Did you ever wonder how it came to pass that all of the European kings and queens all came from the same family? During World War I, the King of England would correspond with the Kaiser in Germany. They were cousins, as was the Queen of Denmark and the Tsars of Russia, all one big world-dominating family. Just because these folks are not worshiping Satan in any of his many disguises doesn't mean he's not pulling their strings. Just think, the puppet masters are actually puppets as well. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. This has been Strange Things with Chris James. And next Saturday, we'll be talking about the Texas Bigfoot Conference that is winding down even as we speak. Yes, if you're not in Jefferson right now, you've missed it. But then again, if you're near Karnak, you can swing by the Big Pines Lodge and yell across the parking lot as we enjoy the after-conference dinner with all the speakers. So tune in next Saturday to find out what all you missed. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed this show.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?